Alright guys, we're coming off the back of an FA Cup weekend, but we are back for our Championship score predictions. Now I must stress, we do of course have a game going on tonight in the Championship. That sees Blackburn going up against Portsmouth. If you want to see my prediction to that game, then go back to Monday's video where we previewed that one. But for the purposes of today's video, we'll be focusing on all of the matches coming up this weekend in the Championship. And I want to hear from you in the comments down below. Make sure to drop your score predictions down there. But without any further ado, let's jump in. Starting out with a big clash on Friday night, that sees Burnley going up against Sunderland, the game which could have huge implications around the top end of the Championship. If Sunderland win this one, that would really shake things up around the automatic promotion race. They actually leapfrog Burnley in the league table if they walked away with all 3 points. But if Burnley claim all 3 points, they go 5 points clear of Sunderland and would really solidify their place in the top two. Now, it is worth remembering when these two sides first met earlier in the campaign, it was Sunderland who walked away with all 3 points. Burnley have only lost 2 matches so far this season, and one of the opponents who did get the better of them was Sunderland. Now, Burnley still yet to lose at Turf Moor this season, and I'm not sure if I'm going to back against them in this sort of match, but I fancy it to be tight, as most Burnley games tend to be at Turf Moor. I think I'm sitting on the fence to kick off this weekend. Score prediction there, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. Find it hard to separate those two right now. Neither of them are losing many football matches. I could see it going either way, but I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. The game that we always look forward to is the South Wales Derby, and that's taking place this weekend between Cardiff and Swansea. Now, obviously, Cardiff were in action in midweek against Watford, a game which, Cardiff fans will be thinking they really should have won. Despite being in the ascendancy for the vast majority of that game, they threw it away late on and ultimately had to settle for a point. Now, in terms of the recent history between these two sides, it has tended to be a fixture that has favoured Swansea in recent history. Cardiff have only won 2 of their last 12 meetings against their bitter rivals, and going off the league table right now, you'd have to have Swansea as the favourites coming into this one. There's 10 points separating these two sides coming into this weekend. With that being said, Swansea have been a little bit dodgy on the road of late. They have lost their last 2 away matches. Cardiff coming off the back of 3 consecutive draws, but does form go out the window in a game like this with this much emotion? And you can make an argument it probably does. A draw here wouldn't surprise me. I just think that Swansea at their best are a better team right now than Cardiff at their best. I've got a gut feeling that Swansea may just edge it, Score prediction, I'm going to go 2-1 Swansea. Apologies, Cardiff fans. After that, we go to the den for Millwall up against Hull City. Don't see there being a great deal between these sides, to be honest with you. Hull have definitely had a bounce under Ruben Sellers. Since Sellers was appointed, actually, Hull would be 16th in the league table had the Championship started after they appointed him. They've been averaging just over 1 point per game under their new boss, which obviously shows the gradual improvement they've had of late. For Millwall, they've not quite had that new manager bounce under Alex Neil as of yet in the Championship. It's a loss and a draw for Neil in his first 2 games in charge. Obviously, they did have that win, though, over the weekend in the FA Cup. This game feels like the first goal is quite crucial, to be honest with you. Hull, other than that bonkers 3-3 draw they had recently against Leeds, aren't conceding a great deal of goals right now, but Millwall always make it very difficult for the opponent, especially when they score first at home. Score prediction here, I'm just going to give it to Millwall with home advantage and go 1-0, but a draw there wouldn't surprise me either. Next up, we go to Plymouth up against QPR. Obviously, we had Plymouth in action in midweek. They were playing against Oxford. Ultimately ended as a 1-1 draw. Is that a bit of an opportunity missed for Plymouth? Perhaps. I do think their survival bid this season will be based around whether or not they can win those types of home matches. Obviously, away form's been a real problem for Plymouth all season, but this is another chance for them here, albeit against a QPR side who have been a real tough nut to crack in the Championship of late. Marty Cifuentes' side have only lost 1 of their last 11 league matches. I know they were sort of put to the sword over the weekend in the FA Cup, but I think they'll be able to get that out of their system pretty quickly. Home Park hasn't been an easy ground for many sides to visit this season. I wouldn't be surprised if this one plays out as another draw, which isn't really that helpful for Plymouth right now in the situation they're in. Score prediction, going to go 1-1 between those two. Next up we go to Coventry up against Bristol City. Another game which I see being fairly close, to be honest with you. Since Frank Lampard came in at Coventry, Cov have been averaging 1.37 points per game, which if averaged over an entire championship season would be worth 63 points. So a solid mid-table sort of finish. That's the sort of form that Coventry have been in under Frank Lampard so far. Now in the context of Bristol City, if they continue to pick up points at the same rate between now and the end of the season as they have been so far, they'd end the season with 65 points. So there's really not a great deal between Coventry and their form under Lampard and what Bristol City have been doing recently, which makes me think this game's going to be pretty tight, and it's leading me into maybe predicting another draw, to be honest with you. Let's have some fun with it and say there'll be a few goals. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw between those two. After that, we go to Derby up against Watford, two sides who could desperately do with all 3 points. Prior to Watford's game against Cardiff in midweek, they'd lost 3 on the bounce. It wasn't the best performance from Watford once again, but they did manage to rescue a point late on, which sort of puts an end to that losing run. Going up against a Derby side who, like I say, could desperately do with all 3 points in this match. Derby are coming off the back of a couple of tough away matches recently. Obviously, it generally has been their home form that they've leaned on this season to pick up the majority of their points. Going up against a Watford side who aren't at their best right now. Oh, a draw here wouldn't surprise me, but I've backed too many draws so far this weekend. I'm just going to go 1-0 Derby. Reckon they could just edge it at home. After that, we're off to Kenilworth Road for Luton up against Preston North End. This will be Matt Bloomfield's first game in charge of Luton, and a good opportunity for them to get off to a winning start under their new boss. Preston, while we have been very solid under Paul Heckingbottom, still haven't cracked the code for our away form, which has continued to be quite spotty all season. And I'm always wary of going to play a side like Luton, where they have been fairly solid at Kenilworth Road so far, but especially under a new manager, where I'm sure that whole crowd will be behind him. Now, funnily enough, in the reverse fixture earlier in the season, the circumstances of this game were sort of flipped on its head. Paul Heckingbottom had just come in at North End. We were fortunate enough to have a bit of a new manager bounce in that game, and North End took advantage and won it 1-0. I've got a bit of a feeling that Luton could play on the fact that it is a new boss coming in. There'll be a bit of a new energy around the ground, I'm sure. They'll have had a longer recovery as well, obviously, with Preston being in action on Tuesday in the FA Cup as well. Score prediction there, I'm reluctantly going to go 2-1 Luton and say that Bloomfield gets off to a winning start. Next up, we go to Oxford up against Blackburn. I'm sure Oxford will be keen to return back to the Kazam after 3 consecutive away matches in the Championship, which they've done quite well in all of them, to be fair. They got all 3 points away at Millwall and then got draws away at Preston and Plymouth. Obviously, that Plymouth game taking place last night. Back at the Kazam, though, where Rowett will be keen to turn it into a bit of a fortress. He's already won 2 out of 2 of their league home matches so far this season. Obviously, it goes without saying we are recording this one before Blackburn have played their midweek match tonight against Portsmouth. So if you want to hold back on predicting this game before that one has taken place, feel free to do so. Blackburn do tend to be quite decent value for money in away matches, to be fair. They always tend to keep them quite tight, as how John Eustace likes to. Rowett won't be keen to give much away to the opposition, though. I think I can see this one ending level. 1-1 draw, I'm saying, between those two. Next up, we go to Fratton Park for Portsmouth up against Middlesbrough. Now, obviously, it is worth stressing, if you guys are watching this video on Wednesday, Portsmouth are in action tonight in the Championship as they travel away to Blackburn. So, worth taking that into consideration when making this prediction. Maybe Borough will be a little bit fresher for this fixture, perhaps with that bit of a longer recovery, but Portsmouth have been a tough nut to crack, generally speaking, at Fratton Park of late. Borough, I think it's all about solidifying a place in the top 6 right now. They have been on a decent unbeaten run. They've not lost any of their last 6 championship matches, albeit there have been quite a few draws in there recently, and even if we think back to the reverse fixture between these two earlier in the season, that ended level at 2-2. Wouldn't be surprised if that happens again. I'm just going to edge it to Borough and say that maybe they benefit from a bit of a longer recovery. I'm going to go 2-1 Borough on the road for that game, but Portsmouth always worth a point or 3 at home, it has to be said. After that, we go to Bramall Lane for Sheffield United up against Norwich, and I think Sheffield United have to take advantage of weekends like these where top two contenders are going up against each other in Burnley and Sunderland. At least one of those sides will be dropping points this weekend, if not both of them, if that game ends level. So there's an opportunity here for Sheffield United to get a little bit of momentum, and even looking at their upcoming fixtures, I think there's a good chance for the Blades to go on maybe a bit of a winning streak. Only one of their next 7 games is against a top 10 side in the Championship. So, I mean, this game against Norwich won't exactly be a walk in the park. You know, they've been on a decent run in the Championship recently, but the Canaries were obviously well beaten over the weekend in the FA Cup. Important to remember, they will be without Borja Sainz as well for the next few weeks, as he'll be serving his suspension. Not many sides have gone to Bramall Lane this season and even scored. I do fancy Norwich to get a goal in this game, but I'm just going to edge it in favour of Sheffield United. 2-1 Sheff United I'm feeling for that fixture. After that, we're off to the Hawthorns for West Brom up against Stoke. This has the feeling of a fairly low-scoring game. I think Stoke, despite their faults going forward, you know, they've not exactly been the most prolific sides this season. They have kept 3 consecutive clean sheets in the Championship, obviously, and then over the weekend in the FA Cup got a good win over Sunderland, which I'm sure will be a bit of a confidence booster for Mark Robbins' side. With that being said, West Brom are no easy customers. I know they were well beaten in the FA Cup against Bournemouth in the end, but in the Championship, they've only lost 2 of their last 18 matches. I know there's still a bit of chaos going on behind the scenes there. Still looking for that Carlos Corberán replacement, but the Hawthorns is a tough place to go. Do you know what? I wouldn't be massively surprised if this one ends goalless, but I'm just going to give it to West Brom with home advantage to shade it with a 1-0 home victory. I think that one will be a tight one though. And then to round off the weekend at Ellen Road for Leeds up against Sheffield Wednesday. This one could be interesting. Wednesday, who have been on a good run of form recently, they've only lost 2 of their last 11 matches. I know Ellen Road's been a really tough place to go so far this season, but Danny Roll definitely has it in him to cause Leeds some frustrations and headaches for this one, especially a Leeds side coming off the back of a few flaky moments in their last Championship match, which they ultimately drew 3-3 with Hull City. Now, Leeds are unbeaten in their last 10 home matches, and generally speaking, sides do find it tough to go there, but Wednesday do have something about them. I think they'll be good for a goal in this one, but whether or not they escape with a point, I'm not too sure. Score prediction, I am going to go 2-1 Leeds in that match and back Daniel Farke's men to get back to winning ways in the Championship. Well guys, there you have it. That will wrap it up for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like and make sure to drop your score predictions in the comments down below. But apart from that, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.